Yeah, I think there's probably two things. I think one is that when you look at millennials, that and we know millennials will make up a huge part of the workforce in the not too near future, and their drive is much more around purpose. They don't want to just work in a company to make money or to kind of have a good job. They actually want to work for a company that gives them that kind of bigger sense of like striving towards something. And that could be either for the greater good, or it could be just a company that kind of contributes to society, or where they just feel themselves they're getting more out of it. So I think that's one of the reasons why there is a lot of focus on employee experience and culture in the office. I think the other big one is that I think most companies have now acknowledged that diversity and inclusion is a very important part of business, and that diverse companies with a diverse workforce are much more successful. But on return, that also means to include these people and make them feel welcome in the office, you need to kind of create a certain culture that actually makes these employees feel that they belong. So at LinkedIn, we talk about creating belonging moments and treating our employees beautifully, because we believe that if you do that, in return, you have a much happier and a much more productive workforce. So I would say it's probably difficult or probably easier to say that a negative employee experience has a lot of like cost associated with it. So I would probably come from that angle. So we do know, for example, that referrals is one of the most successful sources of hires an organization can have. And at LinkedIn, we have about 30% of our hires coming from referrals, candidates. And that means those people, they usually stay longer, they're more productive, and they're usually just a better source of hire. But you only would have your employees referring other people if they're happy and they actually believe in the company they're working for. So there's a direct correlation here between positive employee experience to referring other people into the company and actually acting as recruiters. The other bit is, when you think about social recruiting, is having your employees as brand ambassadors, meaning that they talk positively about the organization, either on social media or to their friends and family. And we know that it's much more powerful if they tell others about the company than when companies just basically blowing their own trumpet and saying, oh, we are the best company to work for. So this is just like two examples where I believe like positive employee engagement and experience basically translates into a positive talent brand and also more successful sources of hire, basically. Definitely. I mean, we know from research, for example, that 80% of business leaders believe that a strong talent brand puts them in a position of like hiring better people. And I mean, we see it at LinkedIn that, for example, if you have a strong talent brand and you can measure that in a talent brand index, then usually you see higher response rates on emails because people have a higher affinity with your organization. You would also see that, we see it ourselves, that sometimes we have candidates actually accepting lower offers because they believe like it's not only about the salary, and there's much more that LinkedIn can offer in comparison to other organizations. So again, your talent brand can actually help you to close a candidate and to get offers accepted, and especially in a competitive market, that is a very, very high advantage you can have over other organizations. That's obviously difficult to say. I mean, we believe that, or I believe that investor brand and talent brand and also consumer brand is kind of interlinked. So you can't necessarily separate one from the other. There's lots of research as well that actually your consumer brand kind of drives your talent brand and vice versa. So I think rather than looking at it in separation, it's probably more important to think about what is the kind of talent brand that you want to portray outside of your organization that actually is aligned with your customer brand and with your investor brand. So you're not talking about completely different brands that you basically push out there into the market. Well, I mean, for example, I know the insurance industry there, they have this big transformation at the moment going on to digitalize, and they need to get more kind of candidates from backgrounds that would probably traditionally like rather go to Facebook or Google or one of those tech companies or one of those startups you mentioned. And the thing they did is basically they just created a very different atmosphere and office culture for those individuals. So they basically literally split out part of their office into a different location. So in London, I know insurance companies who go to Shoreditch, which is a very cool part of London, and they would basically just create an office style and an environment that is pretty much mimicking a startup environment to make sure that these individuals actually work in an environment that they feel most comfortable with. So I think that is one way of doing it. I think the other way of doing it is just like that big companies also need to find ways of keeping agile and not getting too kind of institutionalized. So for example, I mentioned recruitment processes earlier. It's important that the bigger that you get, that you don't just see candidates only as a number, that you still have a recruitment process that is centered around the candidate and their kind of expectations and experiences. And I think if big organizations continue to do that, they will also be able to still compete with those smaller little startups that are obviously popping up everywhere all the time.